You wake up before the alarm, and for a few seconds everything is quiet. There's no pressure yet, no expectations, no notifications demanding your attention. In that tiny space between sleep and consciousness, life almost feels simple. Then your mind turns on. You remember the emails you never answered, the bills waiting on the kitchen counter, the goals you've been promising yourself you'll finally start chasing next Monday, the conversations you wish had gone differently, the version of yourself you keep comparing yourself to. Within moments, your day hasn't even begun, yet it already feels like you're behind. It's a strange feeling, isn't it? You're surrounded by conveniences that previous generations could barely imagine. You carry more information in your pocket than entire libraries once held. Food arrives with a swipe. Entertainment never ends. You can speak to someone on the other side of the planet in seconds. Yet somehow, peace feels farther away than ever. Have you ever wondered why? Not why life is difficult. Humans have always known difficulty. But why? In an age built around making life easier, so many people quietly carry an exhausting sense that they're missing their own lives. The strange thing is that most people don't notice it happening. Life doesn't disappear all at once. It slips away in tiny transactions. 5 minutes checking your phone become an hour. A week of being busy becomes another year gone. You keep telling yourself you'll start living after the promotion, after the vacation, after you lose weight, after the kids grow older, after things calm down, but they rarely do. And somewhere along the way, you stop asking one simple question: what exactly am I waiting for? Yuval Noah Harari has spent years studying the long arc of human history, from prehistoric tribes to artificial intelligence. His work isn't simply about civilizations rising and falling. It's about the stories human beings create, and how those stories quietly begin controlling the people who invented them. One of his most unsettling observations is that humans became the dominant species, not because we were the strongest animals or the fastest. We succeeded because we believed together. Money only works because people collectively believe in it. Nations exist because millions agree on invisible boundaries. Corporations survive because strangers share confidence in abstract systems. Even many aspects of identity are built upon stories repeated so often that they begin feeling like objective reality. This ability transformed humanity into the most powerful species the planet has ever known, but it also created a dangerous possibility. If stories can unite billions of people, they can also imprison a single individual. Maybe you've spent years chasing success because someone convinced you success looked a certain way. Maybe you've measured your worth by income, appearance, productivity, or popularity without ever asking who created those measurements. Maybe you've mistaken someone else's definition of a meaningful life for your own. The prison doesn't need walls when it's built inside your assumptions. History is filled with people who believed they were free while following invisible scripts. Thousands of years ago, our ancestors lived in small bands. They didn't own much. They rarely planned decades ahead. Their lives were uncertain, often dangerous, but their attention remained anchored to the immediate world. Then agriculture changed everything. Harari famously describes the agricultural revolution not simply as humanity domesticating wheat, but wheat domesticating humanity. That sounds almost absurd until you think about it. People cleared forests, built settlements, labored endlessly, and organized entire societies around protecting crops. They worked longer hours than many hunter-gatherers had. Their diets often became less varied. Disease spread more easily. Hierarchy intensified. Yet generation after generation believed they were progressing because each small improvement made the overall system harder to question. One decision led to another. One convenience required another sacrifice. Until eventually nobody remembered what had been traded away. Doesn't that sound strangely familiar? Today we organize our lives around calendars instead of seasons. Screens instead of sunsets, deadlines instead of conversations. Algorithms decide what deserves our attention before we've even decided for ourselves. We've become incredibly efficient. But efficient at what? That's a question Harari keeps quietly placing before his readers. Human beings have become extraordinarily good at increasing power. Technology grows exponentially. Artificial intelligence learns faster each year. Medicine extends life. Economies expand. Yet power and happiness are not the same thing. Knowing how to do something is very different from knowing whether it should be done. History repeatedly shows civilizations mastering incredible technologies without mastering themselves. That might be the defining challenge of our century, because for the first time, humanity may possess the ability to redesign not only the world, but human consciousness itself. Social media already reshapes attention. Advertising quietly influences desire. Recommendation algorithms predict behavior with astonishing accuracy. Artificial intelligence may soon understand your preferences better than your closest friends. If someone else can predict what you'll click, buy, believe, or fear, who exactly is making your choices? That question sounds philosophical until you notice how often you reach for your phone without intending to. Or how quickly your mood changes because of someone else's opinion online. Or how difficult silence has become. Have you ever sat in complete stillness without music, television, podcasts, or scrolling? Not because you were meditating, just existing. For many people, that has become surprisingly uncomfortable. Why? Because stillness removes distraction. And distraction has become one of the most profitable industries in history. Every notification competes for your awareness. Every platform competes for your attention. Every advertisement competes for your identity. Not because companies are evil, because attention has become the world's most valuable resource. The problem is that your life is made from whatever consistently receives your attention. If your attention belongs to everyone else, eventually your life does too. Ancient philosophers couldn't have predicted smartphones, but they understood attention. Marcus Aurelius ruled one of history's greatest empires, while constantly reminding himself that external events only gained power through internal interpretation. The Stoics weren't trying to eliminate emotion. They were trying to reclaim ownership of perception. Because they understood something neuroscience now increasingly confirms. Your brain isn't merely recording reality, it's constructing it. Every moment, billions of neurons filter overwhelming amounts of information. You don't experience objective reality. You experience the version your brain considers important. That's why two people can live through the same event and remember entirely different experiences. Attention shapes memory. Memory shapes identity. Identity shapes behavior. Behavior slowly becomes destiny. This is where Harari's historical perspective quietly meets modern neuroscience. The stories surrounding you eventually become the stories within you. If you're constantly told that happiness lives one purchase away, your brain starts searching store shelves for fulfillment. If you're told your value depends on achievement, rest begins feeling like failure. If you're told life is a competition, everyone becomes either a rival or a judge. Without realizing it, borrowed narratives become personal beliefs. Carl Jung spent much of his life exploring another invisible landscape, the unconscious. He believed much of human behavior originates beneath awareness. People don't merely think, they are thought. Thoughts inherited from family, culture, childhood, and history quietly guide decisions long before conscious reasoning arrives. Modern psychology has repeatedly found evidence supporting similar ideas. Much of what we call personality consists of automatic habits operating below awareness, which raises an uncomfortable possibility: how much of your daily life is genuinely chosen, and how much simply repeats yesterday? Think about your morning. Did you consciously decide every action? Or did habit quietly carry you from bed to bathroom, coffee to phone, email to work? Habits are remarkable because they free mental energy, but they can also imprison us without resistance. After enough repetition, even dissatisfaction feels normal. People stay in careers they dislike, relationships that slowly empty them, cities they never intended to remain in, beliefs they never questioned. Not because they consciously choose suffering, because familiarity feels safer than uncertainty. Our brains evolved to prefer predictable discomfort over unpredictable possibility. Thousands of years ago, that bias helped keep our ancestors alive. Today it often keeps us emotionally asleep. Nietzsche warned that people frequently seek comfort over truth. Not because they're weak, because certainty feels intoxicating. A fixed identity protects us from difficult questions. Who am I? What matters? What if I've been climbing the wrong mountain? Those questions aren't merely intellectual, they're deeply emotional. Changing careers isn't only changing jobs. It often means changing identity. Ending unhealthy relationships isn't simply losing someone. It's losing the future you imagined together. Questioning lifelong beliefs can feel like dismantling your own foundation. No wonder so many people avoid self-examination. It's easier to stay busy. Busyness creates the comforting illusion of purpose. The calendar fills, the inbox empties, the paycheck arrives. Years pass. Then one ordinary afternoon, often without warning, something interrupts the routine. A funeral, a diagnosis, a child asking an unexpectedly honest question, a quiet drive home where the radio accidentally stays off. Suddenly you realize you've been surviving far more than you've been living. That realization can feel terrifying. It can also become the beginning of freedom. Buddhist philosophy has long suggested that suffering often comes less from reality itself than from attachment to how reality should be. We resist aging. We resist uncertainty, we resist change, we resist endings. Yet every living thing exists within change. The river flows because it doesn't cling to yesterday's water. Forests regenerate because old trees eventually fall. Your own body replaces countless cells every single day. Nature doesn't apologize for transformation. Only humans try negotiating with impermanence. Harari often reminds us that history isn't moving toward a predetermined destination. There is no cosmic guarantee that progress automatically produces fulfillment. Humanity has become astonishingly skilled at reshaping the external world, yet the inner landscape remains as mysterious as ever. We know how to engineer machines that can outperform us in specific tasks, but many of us still struggle to sit quietly with our own thoughts for 10 minutes. Maybe that's the paradox hiding in plain sight. We've learned how to conquer distance but not loneliness. We've learned how to accumulate information but not wisdom. We've learned how to optimize nearly everything except the experience of being alive. And perhaps living your best life doesn't begin by adding something new. Perhaps it begins by noticing what has been quietly stealing it all along. Because the most powerful stories are never the loudest ones. They're the ones you've repeated to yourself for so long that you've forgotten their stories at all. Once you begin to recognize those stories, something unexpected happens. You don't suddenly become fearless. You don't wake up one morning with perfect clarity, endless discipline, or complete peace. Real life doesn't work that way. But a small crack appears in the walls you've been living inside. And through that crack, light begins to enter. The strange thing about awareness is that it rarely changes your circumstances overnight. It changes your relationship with them. You still have responsibilities. You still have bills to pay. There are still difficult people, disappointing moments, unexpected setbacks, and mornings when motivation never arrives. But underneath all of that, another possibility begins to emerge. You no longer mistake every passing thought for the truth. You begin to notice that your mind is constantly producing stories. Stories about who you are. Stories about who other people are. Stories about what success should look like. Stories about what you're capable of, what you've missed, what you'll never become. And perhaps for the first time, instead of obeying every one of them, you simply watch. That simple shift has fascinated neuroscientists for years. The human brain evolved to predict. Long before it reacts to the outside world, it is already constructing expectations about what comes next. It fills in gaps, anticipates danger, and creates meaning from incomplete information. This remarkable ability kept our ancestors alive. But it also means your experience of reality is filtered through countless assumptions you've barely noticed. If you expect rejection, you'll find evidence for it. If you expect failure, ordinary obstacles suddenly feel like confirmation. If you believe you're never enough, no achievement will ever feel sufficient. The mind doesn't merely reflect reality, it actively edits it. That's why two people can stand in exactly the same room and leave believing completely different things happened. One sees opportunity, the other sees threat. One notices gratitude, the other notices scarcity. Neither is necessarily lying. They're living inside different stories. Harari often points out that humans don't simply cooperate through shared beliefs. We survive because of them. But those same beliefs can become outdated long before we realize it. Entire societies can continue following narratives that no longer serve them simply because questioning them feels dangerous. The same thing happens inside individual lives. Maybe you've been carrying a definition of success that belonged to your parents. Maybe you've inherited fears that were never actually yours. Maybe you've confused being admired with being fulfilled. Those ideas don't disappear just because you recognize them. But recognition gives you something priceless. Choice. And choice is where a meaningful life quietly begins. Have you ever noticed how children experience time? An afternoon feels endless. A summer feels like forever. Everything is astonishing because almost everything is new. Then adulthood arrives. Weeks blur into months. Months dissolve into years. Birthdays seem to arrive faster every time. There's a fascinating psychological explanation for this. The brain pays close attention to novelty. New experiences create richer memories because they demand more awareness. Repetition, on the other hand, becomes compressed. Familiar routines require very little conscious attention, so they leave fewer vivid mental landmarks behind. The result is unsettling. The more automatic life becomes, the faster it appears to disappear. Perhaps that's one of the greatest hidden costs of living unconsciously. Not only do we miss moments while they're happening, we lose them twice. Once in experience, then again in memory. That's why some of your most unforgettable memories probably weren't expensive. They weren't perfectly planned. They weren't optimized. Maybe it was laughing until your stomach hurt with people you love, watching snow fall outside a window, driving with no destination, holding someone's hand in complete silence, looking up at the night sky and suddenly remembering how unbelievably small and unbelievably alive you are. Those moments resist measurement. No productivity app can optimize them. No algorithm can manufacture them. And yet they become the moments that quietly define a life. Modern society has become extraordinarily skilled at measuring what matters least, while overlooking what matters most. We count followers, incamavios, steps, calories, productivity. Hours worked. Emails answered. We quantify almost everything except the quality of our own attention. But attention is where life actually happens. Not yesterday, not tomorrow, only here, only now. That idea has echoed across centuries, appearing in traditions that never met each other. The Stoics spoke of returning to the present, because the present is the only place where action is possible. Buddhist teachers spoke of awareness, because suffering often grows from living everywhere, except this moment. Existential philosophers argued that meaning isn't discovered, like buried treasure. It's created through conscious participation in life itself. Different languages, different cultures, different centuries. Yet they all kept pointing toward the same overlooked truth. Life is experienced one moment at a time. Lose enough moments, and eventually you lose your life without ever realizing where it went. Technology has made this challenge infinitely more complicated. Never before has the human mind competed against machines specifically designed to capture and hold attention. Every swipe teaches an algorithm something new about you. Every pause becomes data. Every preference becomes prediction. Harari has warned that as artificial intelligence becomes more sophisticated, it may know people better than they know themselves. That isn't science fiction anymore. Recommendation systems already predict what you'll watch, what you'll buy, what you'll believe, and increasingly what you'll feel drawn toward. That doesn't mean technology is the enemy. Far from it. Technology has cured diseases, connected families across continents, democratized education, and given ordinary people access to extraordinary knowledge. The question isn't whether technology is good or bad. The question is whether you're using it. Or it's quietly using you. There's a profound difference. One expands your life, the other replaces it. When was the last time you finished scrolling and genuinely felt more alive? Not distracted, not entertained, not informed, alive. It's a difficult question, because many of us have confused stimulation with fulfillment. Stimulation is immediate. Fulfillment grows slowly. Stimulation asks for another click. Fulfillment asks for your presence. One leaves you craving more. The other leaves you quietly grateful for enough. Gratitude itself is strangely misunderstood. People often imagine gratitude as pretending everything is wonderful. It isn't. Gratitude doesn't deny pain. It refuses to let pain become the entire story. You can grieve and still notice beauty. You can struggle and still recognize kindness. You can be uncertain and still appreciate the miracle of existing at all. That perspective doesn't erase suffering. It transforms your relationship with it. Psychologists sometimes describe this as cognitive flexibility. The ability to hold multiple truths at once. Life can be difficult and deeply meaningful. You can be incomplete and worthy of love. You can be afraid and still move forward. Perhaps wisdom isn't reaching a place where contradictions disappear. Perhaps it's learning how to carry them gracefully. Carl Jung believed that much of maturity comes from integrating the parts of ourselves we'd rather ignore. The ambitious side and the exhausted side. The confident side and the frightened child who still lives somewhere inside us. We spend years trying to eliminate our imperfections when real growth often begins by understanding them. Because whatever you refuse to face eventually begins making decisions for you. Unspoken fears become silent limitations. Ignored emotions become unconscious habits. Avoided conversations become lifelong regrets. Freedom doesn't come from becoming someone else. It comes from becoming honest. Honest about what matters. Honest about what doesn't. Honest about the finite nature of time. That last one may be the hardest. Every civilization has searched for ways to outrun mortality. Kings built monuments. Explorers searched for mythical fountains. Scientists pursue longer lifespans. Today, billion-dollar industries promise endless youth. Yet death has always carried an uncomfortable gift. It clarifies. If your time were truly unlimited, every decision could wait. Every dream could be postponed. Every apology delayed. But life doesn't offer infinite tomorrows. Not as punishment, as perspective. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself almost daily that he would die, not to become pessimistic, but to become present. Because remembering that life ends has a strange way of teaching you how to live. Suddenly the argument isn't worth winning. The extra hour with someone you love becomes priceless. The sunset stops being ordinary. The phone call you've been putting off suddenly matters. What if living your best life has very little to do with constructing the perfect future? What if it's about becoming fully available for the life that's already unfolding? Not settling, not giving up on ambition. Simply refusing to sacrifice today in exchange for an imaginary someday that never seems to arrive. Success is a beautiful thing when it grows from purpose. It's a prison when it grows from fear. Achievement can enrich your life, it cannot replace your life. Somewhere along the way, many people started treating themselves like projects that always need improvement. Every habit optimized. Every weakness corrected. Every minute productive. Self-improvement became another race with no finish line. But here's the irony. The healthiest people rarely spend every waking moment trying to fix themselves. They spend more time paying attention. They notice when they're drifting. They notice when they're rushing. They notice when they're living according to someone else's expectations. Awareness becomes their compass, not perfection. I'd love to hear your perspective here because it's a question there are no universal answers to. What is one ordinary moment in your life that makes you feel genuinely alive? Not your biggest accomplishment. Not your greatest possession. Just one simple moment that reminds you why being here is enough. Share it in the comments. Someone reading your answer might remember something they've forgotten about their own life. Because sometimes the most meaningful conversations happen between strangers who realize they're carrying the same invisible questions. And perhaps that's what Harari has been trying to show all along. History isn't merely the story of empires. It's the story of human consciousness. Every generation inherits incredible tools. Every generation invents powerful stories. Every generation must decide whether those stories will serve humanity, or humanity will serve the stories. That decision isn't made once. It's made every morning, every conversation, every choice about where your attention goes. Every quiet moment when nobody else is watching. Living your best life isn't about escaping uncertainty. It's about refusing to let uncertainty stop you from participating in the miracle of being alive. Some days you'll succeed. Some days you'll forget. Some days you'll fall back into old habits before you even notice. That's part of being human. The goal was never perfection. The goal was awakening. Again and again.